Good evening, and welcome to OmniBros Dead, or Omnibroslive, whatever. I'm your host, one of your co-hosts. I'm Jessima's Prime tonight, and I'm joined, as usual, by the Omnibus Collector himself, Ryley Mo.
What is up?
It just now said... The thing just went live on the little seconds thing, but it said live like a minute ago. Stupid thing. Well, and we'll be joined by Lou here soon. We're here to talk about zombies and ghosts because it was somebody's idea.
It was Luis's idea because there he is.
Hey,
just letting them know that you decided that we should be talking about zombies because The Last of Us 2 is coming out.
Mm-hmm.
I know you will be playing that, and my wife will be playing it as well.
Ryan Sace is already playing it.
Yes, he is. He messaged me already. Lucky bastard.
Did he? He got it before you did?
He time zones. He's it's already midnight on his side of the planet.
Uh-huh. Yeah, he's been talking about it a lot.
He's already ready to go.
Yeah, I'm too heavily involved in Animal Crossing right now to take on the Last of Us.
How's the turnip market, Jess?
Those little rat bastards offered me 53 bells the other day. So I went to my daughter's island and they gave me like 160 bells. And I was like, forget those guys.
There you go. Yeah, the turnip market is relentless, dude.
The little nook crooks. Crooklets.
You know, it renews twice a day, right? Once in the morning, once in the afternoon.
The price does?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
Mm-hmm. You gotta check it out.
But my daughter had texted me that she had a good price going, so I just went over there.
Oh man, I've seen it as high as up to like 400 bells.
Well, yeah, isn't that when people start queuing up online to get on somebody's island for 100 bells or 1,000 bells for admission fee and things?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not. That's too much for me. I just want to play the game. I don't want to go online and time travel and all this other stuff. No, I just want to play the game, man.
You just want to play the game and talk to the owl.
Yeah, what's his name? Bashful? What is it?
Blathers.
Blathers the owl.
Yes, I love Blathers.
Yeah, he's funny. Speaking of great places to buy books, that would be InStockTrades.com, where you can get your collected editions up to 50% off. We saw the return of 50% off books this week, as a matter of fact.
It was a pretty big one, too.
What's that?
It was a pretty big one, too.
Superman, Batman, Omni?
Yeah, that was a pricey one.
Yeah, I got that. I've been dying for that book. Dying like a zombie.
Segueing it back around.
Yeah, and every quarter there's always an Omnibroslive discount code. That'll come back from the dead too. At the end of every month, IST is kind enough to give us a gift card worth $50 to give away to a lucky viewer. Order $50 or more in the United States, and you give a product, and you get free shipping, which is very important, especially if you've ordered a 41-pound box of books, and you're afraid if you get caught, you're dead. Fabulous customer service.
Specific.
That's InStockTrades.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, buddy. Wow.
I love it. I love it, man. Yeah, we're talking the undead, ghosts, and all kinds of spooky, creepy things in honor of The Last of Us 2 that comes out later tonight at midnight. I have my copy already loaded up, and I am super excited for it. Yeah, be careful because there are spoilers out there. I'm not even looking at the chat right now just because people can be dicks sometimes. I really
well, I never look at the chat for the exact same reason.
So you already pre-ordered it, so it's downloading and will be playable right at midnight then?
Yeah, it's already installed. It's just there's a timer on the system and it ticks down, and once it hits midnight, I'm good to go. So
I see you're getting ready to have some cafecito to stay up and play.
Dude, I got Cuban gasoline flowing through my veins right now. I got Café Bustelo, and that shit is just, man, if you want something that's the equivalent of crack cocaine in a cup, it is that. That'll just wire you up.
What is that? Cuban coffee?
It's Cuban coffee. It's Cuban espresso.
Oh.
It's strong. It's
really
good. Strong.
Sounds delightful. I love coffee.
Yeah, it's really strong.
So, well, how long do you think will you stay up all night and play it?
Yeah, probably. Probably. It's probably gonna be. I'm probably gonna be up till about 6, 7 in the morning.
I would place my money on you for that because didn't you just spend 13 straight hours playing FF7?
We don't talk about that anymore, Jess. We don't bring that up anymore. That is not a moment that I am proud of.
I think it's great.
It is it's horrifying. Going from 10 in the morning till 2 in the morning, from 10 in the morning till 2 in the morning, playing Final Fantasy VII Remake a few weeks ago. That is horrifying. No, you should do that.
No, a video game is a perfectly legit use of your time because you're having fun.
It reminds me of being back in like middle school. I think it was whenever Zelda Wind Waker came out. And I think it was during a break, like spring break or summer or something. And I did not move from my TV for like 2 days at least. I think I slept a few hours in between, but that was probably the most glued to something that I've been. The only time that I was ever glued to something with the same ferocity as that game was when I was catching up on Naruto back in middle school or early high school, something like that, reading it online. And I remember like getting past the exams and stuff when they were starting to grow up. And I was like, oh my God. Yeah, they had to literally whip me away from the computer to stop just reading for 12 hours plus a day.
All right. So out there, if you're watching this, that you've landed in a legit nerd zone. Your radar just got pinned to the red. You've entered the nerd zone. You got no problem with that.
Ain't that the truth?
We are happy nerds. Superman Batman is still on IST. I believe I ordered it Tuesday later afternoon, but it's one of the 50% off books. And then the Marvel Masterworks are both 50% off.
Is that Avengers?
Avengers, yes.
Cool.
I don't know what volume it is. Whoa, Joe Chip. I don't know this game. I played System Shock 2 36 hours straight with no sleep.
Oh yeah, that's an old PC game though. That's a precursor to BioShock.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, that's a very old PC game. I think they're doing a remake of the first one, I want to say. But yeah. No, I knew back in its heyday when World of Warcraft was a big thing. I knew guys because I was in high school, I want to say, when it was really blowing up. I knew guys that they'd take a week off of school just because the expansion would come out and you would see them the next week and they'd look dead. Like they look like they haven't showered in a week. It was bad. You hear these news stories about people in Korea and people overseas in China and stuff like that they die in cafes because they just sit there and play video games for like a week straight.
Well, that goes with the theme of the show, the dead and the undead. Internet zombies playing their video games.
Can we talk about Train to Busan? Because I love Train to Busan.
I like Train to Busan also. That's a great movie.
It is. I can't wait for Train to Busan 2, which looks batshit insane.
I love Train to Busan. I'm pretty sure you recommended that for my horror movie channel, which I wish we could do again, but she's just too busy with her work. Here's a compliment from Jacques. This nerdy show always puts a smile on my face. Definitely needed this today. Nice. If you're a nerd, you're welcome here.
Yeah.
So we're talking zombies, ghosts in honor of Last of Us 2. Last of Us 1 was a fantastic game. I played it with my daughter. We both loved it. I love the music. The music in that video game was incredible.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Just incredible.
Yeah. If you get a chance, Jess, I recommend you see the making of it because they interviewed the composer.
Oh, yeah?
And he tells this story about coming from Chile. And he was wanted by the cop. He was a wanted man, and he crossed borders and stuff like that to come to the United States to start over. It's a really crazy story.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
That is some of the most beautiful guitar work.
Mm-hmm.
It is just haunting. I love that.
I'm glad you actually brought it up because the first book I'm recommending is the prequel to Last of Us, American Dreams. American Dreams is written by Neil Druckmann with art by, and I can't remember who the artist is right now. Let me pull it up real quick.
Are we on topic now?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know this book.
American Dreams, The Last of Us is a prequel comic that came out. It was probably around the same time. Here. It's the 4-issue miniseries that's written by Neil Druckmann, the writer who wrote The Last of Us, and Faith Erin Hicks, who's the co-writer and also does the art on it. American Dreams isn't... Okay, so for those of you that have never played The Last of Us or heard of it, I can't imagine there's too many of you out there. Last of Us basically centers around a post-apocalyptic setting where you've got two characters, Joel and Ellie. At the start of the story, and you played the beginning of this, right, Jess? You didn't get too far through it, though?
Last of Us?
Yes.
Yeah, my daughter and I played the whole thing.
Oh, you went through the whole thing. Awesome.
Yeah, we played the whole thing.
Awesome. So at the beginning of the story, there's a zombie outbreak, and it starts you off right there. The thing that's different about this is that the zombies here are basically a variation of the cordyceps fungus. And if you know anything about the cordyceps fungus, what it is that it's a fungus. This is real. This is a real thing, where the fungus, it spreads into ants. And what ends up happening is that once the fungus is inside of the ant, it grows inside of the ant, and it takes control of the ant, and it actually causes the ant to go up to the top of a leaf. And then the fungus starts spreading out, and it starts breaking through the ant's head, and it spreads out, and that's how it reproduces. Eventually, it infects the whole colony, and
that's real.
That's real. That's a real fungus.
Whoa!
Yeah, I'll send you the link. They got the idea off of a BBC documentary that came out a few years ago, but it's real. No, it's a real fungus. Yeah, it's the real deal. So what happens is at the start of the game, the fungus has spread to humans. And you're basically following these two characters as they travel across the United States because, spoilers for like a 7-year-old game, the little girl is immune. So he's trying to pass off the little girl to a group of individuals called Fireflies to basically try and find a cure. But he ended up losing his daughter at the very beginning of the game before he meets Ellie. So the comic is actually a prequel to the prequel DLC of the game. So you see how Ellie eventually meets a young girl named Ryley, who Ellie actually develops feelings for. And everything that leads up to her first meeting her first interaction with her, and all that. It's a really good comic. I don't think, and this is nothing against him as an artist, I don't think Faith Erin Hicks, though, was the right artist for this. He's got kind of a really cartoony style. And with something like The Last of Us, it's so grounded in reality and it's so gritty that it really doesn't necessarily work, in my opinion. And the story is what it is. It's kind of filler stuff. You figure out where Ellie gets her switchblade from, how she got her note, the first time she met Ryley, which she eventually falls in love with, but Ryley ends up dying before the beginning of The Last of Us. And it's a good primer. If you have played the first game and you played the prequel to the first game and you just want a little bit more right before we get into the second game, which launches in a few hours, I think it's a good start for somebody. My hope is that in the next game they address who her mom is, because through nothing that they've released so far have they addressed who Ellie's mom is.
I don't remember her dad at all either. What was her dad's story?
They never address it. They never address who the father is.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah, they never talk about it. Her mom is mentioned a few times in passing, and in the game, if you look inside of her backpack, again, spoilers, when you eventually do play as her in the first game for like a huge chunk of the game, you can look inside her backpack, and there's a note that's written to her from her mom. And you get to actually read the note and see what her mom says to her. But that's about the extent that they go into detail. Originally, what was in the storyline, the lady that hands off Ellie at the beginning of the game, which is a coalition group called the Fireflies, she says to Ellie, I'm going to eventually tell you what the deal is with your mom, like why your mom is who she is, but that never ends up happening. So I'm kind of hoping they touch base on that in the next game.
Yeah, because she got killed right away.
The mom?
No, the woman that handed her off to the guy.
No.
Did she get killed right? As soon as she handed him off?
No, she dies at the end of the game. She's the lady at the end of the game that Joel shoots in order to save Ellie.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 7-year-old game at this point. If you haven't played the first one, you really should.
Yeah.
She's the lady at the end. Joel shoots her in order to rescue Ellie because they find out there is a possibility that if they drill into Ellie's brain, they can come up with a cure for the fungus. But Joel doesn't let it happen. And you play as Joel and you go through that hospital section and everything like that. Right. And you eventually end up killing the doctors and all that other stuff. And the game ends with Ellie basically looking at Joel over a hillside as they walk over to an encampment that they've discovered and saying, look, I want you to tell me the truth. And whatever you tell me I'm going to believe. Did what you told me that they found a bunch of other people that are immune and that they discovered that there's no cure for it, is all that true? And he lies to her. And it's left ambiguous whether Ellie believes it or not.
I forget what the lie is. What was the lie? Yes? Or no?
Well, yeah, he says yes. He says yes, that everybody, that there was a whole commune of people, that they were cured, but that they were immune, but they couldn't find a cure.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I feel like we played this game a couple of years ago, like 2018.
It's fresh in my mind right now because I finished it probably like a month ago again in preparation.
Oh, you played it again?
Yeah, I finished it a month ago in preparation for today.
It was awesome. I love that game. I love that game. And we can talk about ghosts and zombies. First book I'll talk about is Sheets.
Ooh.
This has Kristan Robertson's name all over it. She's the one responsible for getting me into this book. It is one of the better books I read last year. And it is about a young girl who lost her mother. And she's probably about 15 in this, and they have a family laundromat. The dad has completely checked out, not into doing anything. There's this, in this particular scene right here, there's the sleazeball who wants to buy the laundromat. He has bigger plans for the piece of property, but it's the family laundromat, and that's part of where the Sheets comes from. But the other thing is, there are ghosts in this, children, grown-ups, older adults that just aren't ready to move on. And one of these little ghosts befriends the girl in the laundromat and they end up having a relationship. And it is one of the best books I've ever read. It is so endearing and so sweet and so interesting how the girl ends up growing up, figuring things out, taking over the family business, and even though her dad's checked out, she finds the strength to I don't want to give too much away, but she finds the strength to become the centerpiece of the family, hold on to the laundromat, and interact with these ghosts in the laundromat. It is amazing. I love this book, and it had a free comic book day edition that came out, but I highly recommend Sheets. This is one of the better books I read last year. It's from Caracal, which is Spanish for ghost story. No, I have no idea.
I like the art on that. Very simple, very clean.
Yeah, exactly. And it's gosh, it's just so much fun. I actually would like to reread it right away. It's so good. I really love this book.
That reminds me of Blankets, like the art style.
Yeah. Yeah. So what do you guys have to talk about?
I've got a bunch of stuff here, man.
Yeah, you said you had a stack of books.
I do. I have a stack. I pulled one because the title, and I remember like basically nothing about it, but I remember enjoying it, and it has an artist that I'm a fan of. Maybe you guys have read it and can remember more about the title than I do, but that's Zombie by John Rossum and Fraser Irving. This was a 6-issue miniseries. It was the second volume of the Zombie series. The original one was back, I think it was a Milestone title. But John Rossum writes this character, David Kim, who is a nanotech scientist, and he basically is a zombie. He's immortal. He uses nanotechnology and does not need to eat or sleep or anything. And I don't remember the what happens in this book. I just remember buying it in singles. It was one of the random titles that they had that was right before the New 52 started. So once Flashpoint hit, this ended, got canceled, and we never saw from it again. But I remember digging it, and I picked it up, I think initially because of Fraser Irving's artwork, which I am a fan of. I know some people are not, and sometimes Irving has a weird style in the way he draws some things. But in this book, I think that it was particularly well done. All that said, though, I'd say it definitely deserves a reread because it's been, what is that, like a decade since the New 52 happened. So there's that.
Is that the whole series right in one paperback?
Yes, yeah, it was only the one 6-issue series. But there was, I think, the previous one from the 90s was 15 issues. And then real quick, since I didn't know much to talk on that one, I pulled only two. I only pulled 2 manga this time, so you don't have to worry too much, Jess. The first one is Ajin Demi-Human. This one not technically about zombies, but it is about people who die and are reborn after death. And basically what happens is in the world of this series, there are what they call demi-humans, as the title says, and you don't know who is a demi-human until that person dies. So what happens is once that person dies, if they are a demi-human, then their body will regenerate itself and they come back to life, and they cannot die. Anytime they die, they just regenerate. And the government is trying to kind of learn more about them and capture these people. So it follows a kid who dies at the beginning of the series and finds out that he is, in fact, a demi-human, and his struggle to kind of get away from the government agencies. It's a really fast-paced action title. Every one of these books I've probably read in 20 minutes or less because it's that fast-paced and just full of action that has really nice artwork. It's a really fun title. I've really enjoyed it. And then the other thing, whenever they die, anyone who is a demi-human summons this thing. They have their own version of that thing that can kind of work with them, and they use it kind of as a familiar to fight with them. And then the other manga that I grabbed is a more traditional zombie series, and that is I Am a Human. This is published by Dark Horse and was across 11 of these 2-in-1 paperbacks.
I Am a Hero?
Hero.
Sorry, I Am a Hero. So the series starts out, it's pretty funny because it's like very slowly goes into the zombie stuff.
Really slow.
Yeah, like the entire first volume doesn't turn into zombie stuff until basically the very last pages of the first volume. And when I say first volume, I mean like the first half of this book.
Yeah.
The first original volume. And then it just goes all out into the whole like this is, I think, at the end of the first volume is it going all out into the whole zombie deal. But it focuses on this gentleman right here. He is a manga artist assistant on a series, if I'm recalling correctly. It's been a little while since I read it. And he lives a pretty average life. You know, he has his apartment, his girlfriend. He goes to work, comes back. He doesn't necessarily like his boss. And in the background, as things are going on, it kind of reminds me of Shaun of the Dead, where they kind of show news stories and things that are happening around the country, where they're like, you know, reporting basically what is the zombies. They're like, oh, there's people getting sick, there's people doing weird things. And that's kind of how this starts out, is you just see it in the background, you know, newspapers, news shows on TV, talking about what's going on. And then as it progresses, it leads toward those last.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
Did we lose him?
I don't know. We'll take this time to talk about our $5 zombie. What are you there, Rye?
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where'd you lose me?
I forgot. It was like 30 seconds ago.
Yeah, but we're acknowledging the super chat real quick. So
super zombie chat. First time catching you guys live in a while. Much love and appreciation for all the terrific content. You guys introduced me to some amazing books. Thank you, Chest Rockwell.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, buddy. Are you
cutting out,
Ryley, or just not moving?
You're cutting out in and out, man, for a bit.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Zombie. Jeez.
He's gone zombie. Okay, now you're back.
There we go.
I'm back. Okay, my internet's crap because I think everyone's on their laptops right now, so it's kind of affecting signal. Anyway, so yeah, I Am a Hero. It goes forward from being pretty, you know, slow building into full zombie stuff, and you get to see the main character join with a young girl, like a high school age girl, and kind of traverse across Japan as they just basically try to survive in this zombie apocalypse. But it's kind of it's got the horrific, gruesome take as you get from a lot of zombie stuff, but it's also kind of comedic because you see basically this just nerd, this really dorky dude who's stuck in the middle of the apocalypse, and he mentally is not completely there. He kind of has these delusions of grandeur that he sees himself as a hero, as the title suggests. I am a hero because he's telling you, like, I am a hero. I'm going to survive this. I have a gun and shells because he's basically like an apocalypse prepper. Like, he has all this stuff aside because he knows he's going to need it. And so he finds, you know, this young girl, and he's, you know, I'm the hero. I'm going to protect you. I'll save you and take you to safety. And it just gets, you know, more and more. It's like snowballs in effect, basically, just crazy stuff going on, the weird evolutions that the zombies themselves can take on in this series. And it leads towards a conclusion that was very divisive. I know a lot of people were not very fond of it, but I thought that it worked extremely well. I finished it, and at first was like, eh. And then as I ruminated on it overnight, I came back and I was like, okay, that actually worked really well when you consider the characters and who they are and what they've done throughout this series. And I was very satisfied after thinking about it for a second. But I do recommend it if you're a fan of zombie stuff and you're not averse to reading manga. I do recommend the series. I don't know if it's all still in print, but you should definitely be able to read it online, if not in print. There are 11 of these 2-in-1 volumes with a $20 cover price each.
Nice.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I'll go next. My choice is actually a prose novel. That's my next choice. My choice is a book. Yeah. Branching out a little bit. Branch out a little bit. It won't hurt us. My choice is the book World War Z. Hold on. I forgot who the author is. It is World War Z by Max Brooks. World War Z is a really fun book that it starts off at the beginning of a worldwide zombie apocalypse. You see how it literally begins, and then you follow a guy around the world who he's basically doing interviews with all these different people throughout the process of the zombie outbreak up until the conclusion of it. It's actually a really great, solid read all the way through. It's not even that big of a book. It keeps you engaged all the way through. The characters are great. It has one of my favorite zombie fights, the Battle of Yonkers, in it. And if you're looking for something that is... There was a movie a few years ago with Brad Pitt in it that really wasn't anything close to what the book is.
It's not?
No, not even in the same ballpark. It's completely different. But I still enjoyed the movie for what it was. It's a fun read all the way through, and I really recommend it if you're looking for something that's just like, it's not really high literature. You're not really going to be reading Catcher in the Rye here. You're just having a great time reading a really cool zombie story from the perspective of different things and how the zombie outbreak basically started all around the world and how a bunch of people that they got together and eventually they ended up stopping the outbreak. So that's my recommendation for that. Comic-wise, I'm going to go with, and I know none of us really are huge fans of his here, but I'm going to go with the obvious choice, Walking Dead, because, we can't have a zombie episode without actually talking about Walking Dead.
Sure.
Walking Dead is what it is. I have mixed emotions on Walking Dead. I love the first 48 issues, so that's kind of what I'm going to be focusing on here. I think that's the strongest of the content in that series, and then it kind of just goes into highs and lows for the most part after that. Walking Dead starts out with, for the four of you, I guess, that haven't heard of what Walking Dead is, it starts out with a cop. His name is Rick Grimes, and Rick Grimes, at the beginning of the story, he's chasing a guy who he's on the run. Eventually, Rick Grimes ends up getting shot, and he ends up basically after that in a hospital, waking up in the middle of the zombie apocalypse. And the series just basically follows him, how he tries to protect his family, go about trying to rebuild the world, and trying to basically make it through day by day. First 48 issues of The Walking Dead to me are brilliant. I got to give Kirkman credit for what it is. They are insanely great. It's an insanely great and engaging zombie story. The pacing moves really great. The entirety of the prison arc is brilliant. The beginning of the series is brilliant. And really the thing about Walking Dead is, and he's been compared in this way to George R.R. Martin, where Kirkman really is not afraid to kill off characters at all in Walking Dead. If you have a favorite character, chances are something shitty is going to happen to them along the way. Either they'll lose a body limb, they'll be horribly disfigured, they'll go through some more emotional trauma, or they'll end up dead. But overall, Walking Dead, it's a really fun series, and the cultural influence that Walking Dead has had, I really can't speak enough about it, for good or for worse. Because at the time when Walking Dead was at its peak, I'm talking about the first, I want to say 3-4 seasons of Walking Dead, it was everywhere. You could not go to a con. You couldn't go down the street without seeing something Walking Dead related. It was a cultural phenomenon that I don't think I have ever seen, and chances are maybe won't ever see again in my lifetime for something that huge. Well, maybe with the exception of something like Lost. because that's probably what it was mostly comparable to. But it led to a lot of people jumping on and reading comics, and a lot of people showing up to comic book stores and going, hey, I really want to try Walking Dead. Where can I pick this up? And you start with volume 1, and you just go forward throughout the entire story. So anything that's really good for the industry is okay in my book. So I'm really happy, at least for that and the influence that it had on comics in general.
I think it paved the way also for more like mature comic shows, because we definitely got more stuff, not just superhero related things, after that series found success. And it's, you know, obviously networks and executives pay attention to that stuff, and they're looking at that thinking, you know, if this did that well, then we should try and emulate that. And like you said, I don't think anything else reached that kind of level of cultural phenomena, but it did lead towards some cool stuff. Without a doubt. And like you said, it does lead towards more people going to the bookstores and reading those things. But I don't know exactly when I fell off of the show. I know I read the series until it ended, and I'd say probably at the most the second compendium was the rest of the good stuff, so almost 100 issues. Mm-hmm. Dealing with the governor and all that stuff. And then after that, it just, I felt like he was just spinning his wheels for too long with that.
Yeah. It's the first 48 issues all deal with the governor, them establishing the prison, and them kind of setting things up. And then for me, after that whole situation is done, it ends up really spinning its wheels until about issue 100, when they introduce Negan, and then they introduce the different camps, and then he basically just pulls a Bug's Life and a Seven Samurai, and it's like, oh, you have to give us all your stuff or else we're going to kill people. And I'm like, wow, I've seen this plot like 1,000 times before, Kirkman. Great job. So it's one of those things where he does end up spinning his wheels until the story ends, but I got to give it to him. There's those first 48 issues, man. Especially issue 48, where shit hits the fan hard, and a lot of your favorite characters end up dying after issue 48, and it's like, wow, he really just kind of wiped the slate clean here. What happens next? And eventually what happens next is, oh, he ran out of gas. He kind of blew his load a little bit too early, and now he's got nothing left until he hits about 100, which I fell off the series, the TV show, with the killing of Glenn, which is, I think, where a lot of people kind of bounced off, because it became one of those things where it's like, well, you're kind of treating your audience like idiots, because a few weeks ago you had Glenn hiding under the dumpster for like 8 hours, and then he comes out and he's like, oh, I'm fine. And it's like, well, we know Glenn's going to die because that's what happens in the comic, and Glenn takes the bat, and it's like, well, what we're going to do is we're just going to add more salt to the wound, and we're going to go ahead and kill another character because it's too predictable, and it's just violence for violence sake, and it really doesn't do anything character-wise for the story, and it really doesn't move the story forward or anything. I hate that. That's my pet peeve. Violence for violence sake, I hate it.
I fell off before that. I think like the last thing I remember watching is people started catching a cold.
I don't even know.
It was one of the earlier seasons, and people just started getting sick and catching cold, and that was like the main threat for that. I'm laughing saying that as we're sitting here in the middle of a pandemic, but at the time it was like, really, this is what we're upset about right now, is we're following these characters literally just getting normal sick in the middle of an apocalypse.
I got the chicken pox. But yeah, that's my next choice. I picked Walking Dead.
Jess, you got some Kirkman to talk about?
I don't. I have some Eric Powell to talk about with the Goon. I love the Goon. I'm not a big Kirkman fan, so I had nothing to say during that whole thing. I picked the first volume, but his art, as good as it is in volume 1, his art just gets even better throughout the whole series. It's 5 of these library editions. The goon is right there. He's the enforcer for the local mob boss, and the priest, the zombie priest, the nameless man. He is in town, raising up an army of the undead. And the goon and his buddy, his buddy's name. I can't. What is it?
Is it Frankie?
Frankie, yeah. They're the only ones that can stop the priest, and it's very tongue-in-cheek, very funny, very gritty, really well done, super well written, fantastic artwork. I just love the goon. I think it was Mitch O'Brien that first turned me on to him way back at the beginning of the page, the Omnibus Collectors page. And I'm so glad that I got these in the big library edition, because these things are all out of print now. But Eric Powell's redoing them in softcover collections now with Albatross Press. And this is just top-notch writing, really fun. Lots of zombies, lots of blown-off heads, lots of cut-off limbs, lots of crazy, creepy creatures. It's just super fun, and I love the goon. It's there was a if you can find it on YouTube. I think Lou, you're the one that sent it to me. There's or maybe it was Geo. There's like a 5-minute goon animated pilot that never made it, but it's really great.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of animation. I can't think of what it is, but it's more realistic than just cartoon style. But it's worth checking out on YouTube, because it would have been something great if we could have gotten that goon animated series going. I love everything about Eric Powell. I love the Hillbilly. I love Satan's Sodomy Baby. And
Have you read his Big Trouble in Little China?
I have not.
I binged that like last week or something. He did the first year or so on that one.
Oh.
And then after that, Fred Van Lente came on and did the latter part. But if you're a fan of Eric Powell, you'd probably enjoy that. He also had I don't remember how many issues he did, but he had a Godzilla series that he did as well.
I didn't know that.
He's done a lot of just random. His name pops up in the weirdest places.
Mm-hmm.
I swear, like anytime I download or look up like just a random series, especially like franchise stuff like Godzilla and Big Trouble, his name is always somewhere on it.
Huh.
It's just bizarre.
Speaking of bizarre, he just writes that stuff.
Just writes it. But speaking of bizarre, he did do the art on that Bizarro arc with Jeff Johns.
Oh.
Huh.
It was one of John's earlier Superman stories.
The Goon movie was announced in 2008. There was a CG animated short that was originally supposed to be, it was what they used to pass it around to studios.
Yeah.
But it never got off the ground, unfortunately. I think he'd have a better chance of it getting off the ground now, because we're living in a post-Deadpool world where Deadpool kind of changed like the perception of R-rated comedies, R-rated comic book films. It's like, no, they can make money. The voice cast, Clancy Brown was going to be the Goon, and Paul Giamatti was going to be Frankie.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So it was, it kind of sucks. You can find the trailer online. All you need to do is type in the Goon comic book movie trailer, and it's right there. It looked really cool.
Yeah, the trailer's really boss.
Yeah. The Goon is fun, man. It ends up balancing out the horror elements with the comedy elements, and then eventually, once you start getting into the later stuff, it starts tying in a lot of the stories, and it kind of gets a little emotional.
Mm-hmm.
He does a good job.
Yeah.
Well, I asked about Kirkman because I do, in fact, have some Kirkman to talk about, Jess.
Is it haunted or haunt?
No, it's not. I actually was tempted to try and track that one down recently, but apparently the last volume or something was never actually released of that series.
It's not. It's not Outcast, is it? We will shut this stream off if it's Outcast.
No, absolutely not. I got the Marvel Omnibus.
Just turn the stream around.
It's definitely a, at this point, I see it as a guilty pleasure because I've seen so many people like, that book is trash. But man, I had read most of these stories before the omnibus came out. So this was an upgrade for me that I was like, when I saw the solicit for this like a decade ago, I was like, hell yeah, this is exactly what I want, is a giant freaking hardcover with all the Marvel Zombie stories. This, I think it's been out of print for a little while too. I don't know how much it goes for, but it collects Marvel Zombies Dead Days, Marvel Apes Prime 8, which is horrible, Marvel Zombies Evil Evolution, Ultimate Fantastic Four 21 through 23, and 30 through 32, because it did originally spin out of the Ultimate stuff. Marvel Zombies 1 through 5, Black Panther 28 through 30, Marvel Zombies 2 1 through 5, Marvel Zombies Return 1 through 5, Marvel Zombies 3 1 through 4, 4 1 through 4, 5 1 through 5, and Marvel Zombies Supreme 1 through 5. Now, the first two stories, the first two Marvel Zombie stories, were written by Kirkman. So he takes, obviously, his zombie flavor that he's known for already at this point for writing Walking Dead, and he applies it to Marvel Universe characters. It does spin out, like I was saying, from Fantastic Four, Ultimate Fantastic Four, written by Mark Miller at the time. And basically, they just introduced this new world where a zombie virus outbreak happens and it turns into this whole global apocalypse. But it focuses not on so much like the survivors trying to fight off the zombies like you have in something like The Walking Dead, but rather the story focuses on the heroes and villains who have been turned by this virus. So it's rather interesting because you get to see these characters acting completely different than they normally would, but still retaining some semblance of themselves, and interacting with other characters differently than they normally would as well. So you know it's very comedic in nature because you get to see characters like Captain America and Spider-Man trying to eat people's brains. Mm-hmm. The first two series, like I said, written by Robert Kirkman, have kind of their own separate little storyline, and they work on their own just with those two. Fred Van Lente then comes over and writes volumes 3 and 4, and I know that I'm in the vast minority here, but those are my favorite of all the Zombies minis, because he pulls them through into the main 616 Marvel Universe and has these zombies interacting with a new team of characters that has been assembled to kind of fight off against them and kind of investigate what's going on with these zombies. And it that, like I said, is from volumes 3 and 4, and it has characters like Morbius and the Machine Man and stuff like that. I think Jocasta is in there, and tons of really fun cover art that lampoons various comic covers and movie posters and stuff like that. And it just became a huge success at Marvel, and we'd see so many different, variant covers for zombies, different, zombie related miniseries that would happen after this. It was just huge. It was really huge. I think Sean Phillips actually was the artist on those first two minis, and then Kev Walker takes over for Marvel Zombies 3 and 4. Return is a real mixed bag because each issue is basically just a single story focusing on an individual zombie character and kind of just a separate story about them. There's maybe like 2 good stories out of the bunch. And then Marvel Zombies 5 is a reality hopping team of like Machine Man and Howard the Duck that ends with a really, I think the last issue is just this really kind of existential fourth wall breaking story about a kid who is complaining about how crappy the Marvel Zombies comics have become, but he keeps buying them. And then one of the books that he opens up like spits a virus into the air and turns him into a zombie. So it was just some silly crap by the end of it. But I don't know how much the omnibus goes for. Like I said, I haven't really looked. Back when it first came out, like getting it for less than cover price, significantly less, I would definitely say jump on it. But at this point, if you've never read Marvel Zombies and you're curious about something just fun, I would recommend picking up. I think they have complete collections. At the very least, the paperbacks were so heavily produced that you should have no problem finding some version of Marvel Zombies available out there just to check out, if not going digital. But just an example of like they did movie poster parodies. So there's like The Evil Dead.
Right.
And Arthur Sudam did all the cover work. I actually had him sign the jacket on mine.
It was like $200.
Wasn't he known for being kind of a jerk or something like that?
Yeah, but not like in the way that we get a lot of reports nowadays. He was just, I think he kind of pushed people off of their own tables at cons. Like he would set up his table and set up like 2 or 3 booths, and other people would come in and be like, that's where I'm supposed to be set up. And he's like, tough. Because he's like, oh, I'm a huge name, so I'm gonna. So he's just an asshole. He's not been accused of exactly.
So he gets a pass. Asshole gets a pass now.
Yeah, if all you are is an asshole, you're okay.
Yeah, that's a refreshing turn of events, isn't it?
Right?
No, he's just an asshole. Oh, thank God.
Yeah,
he's not a diddler.
We can only pray as much. That not only is he just an asshole, he's also not like, not bigoted against anyone. He's just an asshole.
Yeah.
So it makes it okay.
Old school,
just practically a good guy.
Real quick though, because I don't have much to say about this one, but I remembered that it was kind of a zombie story when I was looking at my shelves, and that's the Necrotia X storyline, kind of the end of Craig Kyle and Chris Yost's run with X-Force, featuring basically reanimated characters, villains, and heroes from the X-Men franchise coming back during this event. It had some decent tie-ins and stuff, had some artwork from Clayton Crane, which is usually pretty good, but for some reason it just looked super muddy in these issues. So, I mean, it's fine. It's a decent conclusion. It was definitely better read in a collected edition than it was back when it was coming out in singles. I was waiting on every issue to come out, but yeah, I just thought I'd mention that real quick. There was another bigger zombie-related event that happened from another publisher around the same time that if no one else talks about, I'll be talking about in a little bit. But yeah, that was Necrotia.
Okay.
Good choice, man. I've got 2 choices. I don't think one of them technically counts. Does Killer Be? Would you guys classify Killer Be Killed into kind of this area?
Oh,
kind of a gray area.
I feel like it's more mental illness, but there is a creature.
There is a creature in a demonic possession. All right, we'll move past it. All right, we won't do Killer Be Killed.
You like that book, though. I mean, I'm always happy to hear you talk about it.
Okay, I'll do Killer Be Killed. But I have to, before we go, I'm going to definitely talk about Infidel. Infidel's amazing.
I've got it right here to give photo bait while you talk about it.
I'll pass off Infidel to you then.
No, you can talk about it while I'm showing it.
Okay. Killer Be Killed. I'll go real quick through it. Killer Be Killed is basically, it starts off with a story about basically some loser who he's in law school, and he ends up through circumstances finding out that he has been possessed by a demon or a spirit or whatever you want to call it. And basically what ends up happening is that he has to go around and he has to find somebody to kill in a certain amount of time, or else he dies and he ends up going to hell. This is written by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, which is just basically, what would you say, John Lennon and Paul McCartney of comics?
Pretty much, yeah.
Where they've been doing this so long together that they might as well be married. And they produce some of the best comics that ever come out. So it's a really great and fascinating story that explores mental illness and how mental illness and things like that can get passed down from one generation to the next, and how that can affect a child. And it's brilliant. I love Ed Brubaker. I love Sean Phillips' work. And when you pick up one of their books, you are going to get nothing but the best of the best in the industry, hands down. I really don't think I've ever read something by Ed Brubaker that I didn't think, man, that was good. I just can't. I can't put my finger on it. And Sean Phillips is always, Sean Phillips is always A game. There's the man I don't think has done a bad book yet as far as art.
Yeah, good.
My choice, though, my real choice is a book called Infidel, which is probably more relevant now than it ever has been. But Infidel is the story about a Muslim woman who she moves into a building after a series of events that ends up her husband. It was her husband, right? It's been a while since I've read it.
Yeah.
Her husband ends up dying. What they discover is that the building is haunted, and the haunting in the building has a lot to do with the evil inside of a lot of people's hearts and the evil inside of a lot of people's souls, involving racism and involving paranoia and involving a whole bunch of other stuff, and how that kind of comes to light. And it takes basically a physical form in ghosts and in spirits throughout the building. It's brilliant. I love Infidel. I think it's one of the most brilliant comics that I've ever read. It's in my top 5, probably easily in my top 5 of the best horror comics that I've ever read. The art on it is astounding. There are some images in here involving horror and involving creatures that they will be stuck in my head. I can't remember the name right now of the artist and the writer, but it's incredible.
Pornsack Pinochet. Pornsack Pachet. The writer is Pornsack Pachetchot, and the artist is Aaron Campbell. That was easy.
They throw you for the curveball with the first one, and then you get it right.
Wow.
Did you say Pornsack?
Pornsack. Yeah, I think he's from Thailand, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
That's a name.
But I absolutely love this story, and the family that lives there, they basically have to figure out what is going on in the house and the building and how to stop it, because the building has actually had a history of several hauntings and catching on fire and just like a bunch of weird stuff. It's great. It's so goddamn good. It's short too. I think it's only like 5-6 issues, maybe. It's not that long. I don't think it's gonna get a hardcover anytime soon, Raz, because this was a book that flew under the radar for a lot of people. I ended up catching it just because I forgot where it was, but I read the description somewhere and I was like, well, I gotta check that out. But I can't sing the praises of it enough. It's brilliant horror, and it's very timely, especially now. If you really want to read something that's a little bit different than your normal ghost story, it's that as well.
Yeah, you turned us all the OmniBros onto it. I remember sometime, I think a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I loved it. And you're right, it doesn't get enough attention. It doesn't get enough attention at all.
Mm-mm.
My choice would be, he's now becoming one of my go-to writers, and that is Josh Williamson. He wrote Ghosted. I really like what he just wrote, Batman, Superman, Who Are the Secret Six? That was great. That was an excellent Batman book and Superman book. It's a dark multiverse thing, so you got to be into the metal universe and everything to be able to understand it, but it was really well written. This is sort of a Ocean's 11 with ghosts. This guy is hired to steal a ghost from a haunted house, and he has a crew with him, and it's an old man that wants it done, and he's got that's just in the first book, and it's extremely innovative. I think it's really well crafted. You don't know who to trust. You don't know where things are going. It's definitely haunted, and the house is, and the guy that wants him, the protagonist, to steal the ghost from the house, definitely has his own weird motivations, and he's definitely an oddball. I love this series. This was the first book. Second book, he's in the jungle and he's dealing with ghosts. He's not in the jungle here, but the protagonist goes to the jungle and he's dealing with all kinds of crazy, wacky, haunted things in the Brazilian jungle or something. And then the third and fourth books, a magician that grants death wishes, a biker gang that sacrifices virgins, a supernatural black market. It's time for Jackson to stop running from his past and face it head on. These are just really well written, fun type of ghost stories by Josh Williamson. And I'm digging this guy. I believe he's doing the entire Flash run right now, which I had fallen off after it stopped being deluxe. I stopped collecting it, and I imagine I'm going to have to go back and get all the trades because now that I've seen that he's done Ghosted and Flash and the Batman Superman book, I really like a lot of what Josh Williamson has to write.
Yeah, Ghosted was a revelation when it came out. Like that. That's the type of book that put his name on my board like immediately. I was like, yeah, I got to watch what this guy does. And I'm glad that he got picked up by the big two. And he did a little bit for Marvel for a second, but really stayed over with DC. And his Flash run has been really fantastic. And it's coming to a close pretty soon. But I don't know how many issues he's done, but it's longer than most long form runs have been from DC or Marvel for the past several years. So very cool stuff. Well, I got some more stuff here.
Okay.
Here's one real quick that I haven't. It's been a long time since I read this, but I would feel wrong to not mention it, and that is iZombie by Chris Robertson and Mike Allred, who is definitely one of the best comic illustrators out there. And he put so much awesome work into this book. It did get a television adaptation that was on the CW, but the television adaptation was hardly anything like the comic. The comic is more about all these different, I'm just trying to find some cool pages to show, all these different types of ghouls and monsters and stuff appearing in this city and why they're here. Really cool cover right there, and art from the interior there. While the TV show was kind of a procedural, almost police drama where the main character, who in the book was named Gwen and in the show was named Liv, she eats corpses' brains and then solves their murders and stuff like that. But the comic features, a were-terrier and ghouls and a ghost girl and this, mysterious group of people who are basically hunting different monsters, and this weird ancient mummy guy who has some sort of connection to everything. And it's this big ongoing mystery that was really fun. It's been years since I've read it. It was published by Vertigo back about a decade ago, and I picked it up on a whim because that was when Vertigo was doing those first issues were $1. And so I was like, I'm going to grab that. And I absolutely fell in love with it from the first issue. And I had to continue with that.
I
Also,
wholeheartedly agree.
I really don't remember a lot of the specifics about it. I just remember really having fun with it. And I think, did Darwin Cook also do an issue?
Yeah, I think he did. I'm pretty sure he did.
I know he drew a cover. I know that.
Yeah, because I was flipping through and I saw at least his cover in there. Another one that, and I thought I had this one signed also, but I guess I don't. Real quick one was Swamp Thing. This is Scott Snyder Swamp Thing. This ties in along with Jeff Lemire's Animal Man, and they tie in together for the Rot World storyline. Basically, in the DC universe, you have Swamp Thing is the avatar for the green, that's all plant life. Animal Man is the avatar for the red, that's all animal life. And then they introduce in here that Anton Arcane, who is this really pretty guy in the middle, he is the avatar for the rot, which is all the dead stuff in the world. And it leads towards this big storyline crossover thing called Rot World. And there is an issue of each that like kind of leads in and leads out, but the main Rot World story is split into two with stuff that Swampy and stuff that A-Man are doing on their own. So it does kind of have the zombie elements to it in that storyline, and it even features other undead characters. Like I think Frankenstein appears in there. And then another quickie from me, this one is from Marvel, is the Immortal Hulk.
Yay!
One of the absolute best titles on the stands right now. Joe Bennett actually recently mentioned that they're planning on wrapping it up with 50 issues, so they're about a year out from the conclusion. Essentially, Bruce Banner died. He's brought back to life by the Hand, but he's kind of this immortal monster now that comes back to life if he is killed, if he is maimed, if he is anything happens to him. So there's a lot of just body horror throughout this as we get to see the Hulk get dismembered and morph and all this different stuff. I'm trying to find a good example of that in this book, but it's just expertly crafted comic material from Al Ewing. Fantastic artwork all the way through by Joe Bennett. He really makes the Hulk into one ugly mug.
Those Alex Ross covers are gorgeous.
Oh yeah, and Alex Ross does the cover artwork for the entire series. At least so far, he hasn't missed a cover. It's got a lot of deep cuts or semi-deep cuts as far as characters that appear and villains and stuff that come in throughout the series. Like we have the Sasquatch show up as a major character in there. I think Leonard Samson shows up. We get Joe Fixit winds up being a part of it. Just a lot of really cool stuff. If you're a Hulk fan, I don't see any reason to not enjoy this series. It's just some really, really fantastic stuff. And here's some good examples of Joe Bennett's just really morphed, disgusting artwork for the Hulk. Just works so perfectly. I highly recommend it. It's not necessarily a zombie story, but it kind of gives that horror look at the character who is Marvel's biggest monster character. And I have one more, but I'm going to save that for the next, because that one I can talk a little bit more about.
Okay. Do you have one, Lou?
Yeah, I got one more. I got another one. Bitterroot by David Walker and artist Sanford Green. Bitterroot is a really fun, I think, underappreciated series. I'm so happy it got nominated for the Eisner, and I hope it wins this year. Basically centering around a family that lives in 1920s Harlem during the Harlem Renaissance, and they go around and they hunt zombies, monsters, basically anybody that is infected with the spirit of hate inside of them that transforms them into grotesque beings. It's awesome. I love Bitterroot. It's so much fun. Yes. Have you read it?
I haven't.
Oh, it's so much fun, Jess. You'll love it.
Good. Well, let me see some art from it.
It's so much fun, and it says a lot, again, kind of like Infidel, about racism and how hate can really just transform somebody and make somebody a horrible monster. But at the same time, it doesn't it balances out the message well with a lot of really great monster fighting and monster killing and a lot of really cool action set pieces and moments. And I think it's a book that's trying to say something while at the same time it's really being a fun time. And if you've ever studied the Harlem Renaissance and the music and the food and the art and what was going on in that time in the 1920s, you'll get a lot out of it. And if you haven't, you might learn something out of it too. Because this book is just steeped in that kind of lore and that kind of time period.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about this.
I love it. It's short. They took a break, and I think they're on issue 8 after the printing presses and stuff like that, and comic distributors started distributing things. They're only on 8 issues right now, as far as I'm aware, and I think they had a one shot a few months ago.
Yeah, it's full of demons and grotesqueries. Nice. I gotta read this. Okay. I pulled Revival.
Ooh, good choice.
It's 4 hardcovers, so I can't possibly do it justice talking about it now. But it's the dead don't stay dead in this tiny little Wisconsin town, and a sheriff has to investigate it. The dead are coming back to life, but not like zombies. They're like normal. They have their memories. They can talk. Here, a little girl is saying, can you tell my mom I'm here and stuff? And so the sheriff has to try and solve this mystery, and there's all kinds of other stuff that's happening in it, but it's basically the undead are coming back just in this one town, and they have to deal with the national press that's coming in and trying to take over. And I love this book. It's by Tim Seeley with art by Mike Norton. It's 4 hardcover, beautiful issues. I'm sorry, beautiful deluxe hardcovers. And the sheriff just, she has her work cut out for her, trying to figure out why the dead won't stay dead. And, science can't explain it. And I dug the heck out of this book. Ooh, here's a good gory scene.
And it's only in this town that this is happening.
Right.
Yeah. It's really cool because they kind of close off the town to everybody who wants to come into it, and it's how people would really react to a situation like this.
Right. Yeah, and I love the art too.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, this is a way worthwhile read.
All right, well, I got my final pick from my stack. And this is one that I alluded to. I mentioned when talking about Necrotia, there was another zombie storyline that was going on at the time. This one was, I think, a little bit more successful, and that was Blackest Night over at DC. So,
found copies.
Oh, you've got a individual, special little custom guy right there.
Custom bound, yeah, good. I was going to talk about it, but I'm happy to give you the floor. I have 5 Omnis that I had the whole thing custom bound.
Well, yours is probably a little more complete than this one, because I noticed, even though this one states the complete collection across the bottom there's actually a fair amount of material that's not actually collected as far as Blackest Night tie-ins go. It doesn't have a couple of one-shots. It doesn't have like the Doom Patrol issues, for instance, unless I'm just glossing over it and it doesn't say it on the back, but it's in there. Basically, spinning out of Jeff Johns' run on Green Lantern, as people are aware, Jeff Johns kind of expanded the Green Lantern mythos to include an entire spectrum, the emotional spectrum of Core. from red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. And through the early parts of his run, he slowly introduces, we've got the Sinestro Corps War happens, and that goes forward and introduces us to, the Star Sapphires as the Violet Lantern Corps, and we get introduced to the Red Lanterns during Final Crisis, the Blue Lanterns, Indigo, Orange winds up being the last one before we finally get to Blackest Night, which introduces the Black Lanterns. And we have a classic villain of the Green Lantern, the Black Hand, who winds up becoming the kind of avatar for not really the avatar, but the main officer, I guess, of the Black Lantern Corps. And while every lantern color corresponds with an emotion, the Black Lantern Corps responds to death. So he attaches rings to dead heroes and villains of the DC universe, creating basically zombified versions of DC's characters. So a lot of characters who are at the time currently dead or have even died before, those who have had some sort of a connection to death in the past, are now coming back and becoming these Black Lanterns in what was really an exciting event. I remember at the time just how fun it was to see the entirety of the DC universe just turned on its head with all these zombified characters, and it was something really different and fun. Seeing your favorite characters, like, I'm not even going to try and show art at this point because this thing's so huge. So Jess, if you wanted to show off any of your stuff, feel free, because this thing's way too big for me to hold up like that.
Yeah, the thing is huge.
But just seeing these characters that we know and love coming back in zombie form, it was something just cool. Following from week to week and seeing all the different figures come out and all the different variant covers and specials and all that stuff. I was a big fan already of John's Green Lantern and just how inventive he was and kind of expanding on them and putting all these different colors together, but then seeing them go even further and doing the stuff with the Black Lanterns, moving forth with, I think they were saying some sort of prophecy that they had been leading up to in the books and coming out and giving us Blackest Night. It was just so exciting, the really fun long form story that felt, it felt like there was payoff. And it was an event that I think was really successful. It was exciting from beginning to end. It had a good conclusion, in my opinion. And the Brightest Day event afterwards was not great in itself, but when looking at the Brightest Day era of the Green Lantern books in particular, there was still a lot of really cool stuff going forward from there, introducing more concepts and dealing with the White Lantern and stuff like that. And it's Jeff Johns just changed the entire landscape of the Green Lantern titles from there forward.
Yeah.
Well said.
Major.
Yeah, well said. There's nothing else that needs to be said. Jeff Johns' Green Lantern run is one of those runs that everybody loves, and it's pretty much universally agreed on that it's pretty damn great. People, now you look back, now we're flooded with a bunch of different, colored Green Lanterns and stuff like that. Different colors for the different rings and stuff like that. But at the time when this was coming out, it was truly like, whoa, this is really cool.
Yeah.
I remember they were flooded. Did you guys get the rings? I remember my comic.
I have my rings. Yeah.
It was, I think, also really cool. Like, he was tying this stuff together with things that we had seen from previous stories, like such small things like the Red Lanterns coming from Ismalt, a planet that was in a one-off story by Alan Moore, stuff like that, and just tying things in with these little bits of information that we've had, and giving Sinestro his entire core, and actually expanding upon the because the Cordian antimatter weapon that he was using. So it was just really cool because it felt like Johns did his homework and was very respectful of this franchise that he obviously enjoyed dearly. And he wasn't just doing, senseless retcons. He was going into the history of this franchise and these characters and carefully picking different things. It was very much like the only other person I can really think of that did that so well was Grant Morrison with his Batman run, and like picking random little things from Batman's past and being like, yeah, let's use Zurinar here and like make this make sense again in a way that doesn't make sense. But it was just so cool. And it was a big introduction for me to the greater DC universe, because it was the first DC event that I bought in singles. And so before that, I was only reading a few DC titles week to week or month to month as they came out. And this really opened me up to being interested in a lot more different stuff. I was like, oh, well, I've never followed a Superman book before, but I really want to see what Lex Luthor does in this run where, he's trying to find a black ring.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that. It had me really expand my interest. The Flash series that spun out after this, because now Barry Allen was back. I started reading the Flash after that point. So it was such a fun event. I think it succeeded so well. And I don't know that DC's had an event as good since that. Like I've had fun with like metal and stuff, but
I would agree with that. Not on that scale, because Blackest Night was a thing where you would go. It was the closest thing we probably had, and I'm probably being hyperbolic here, but it was probably the closest thing we probably had since the death of Superman, where it kind of reached almost mainstream culture, because you would see people walking around with the different colored like lantern shirts and stuff like that, and some people got tattoos, and you'd see people walking around with the rings, and it was everywhere. It really was everywhere. You couldn't walk into a comic book store without seeing it, or you couldn't walk onto a con floor without seeing somebody wearing the shirts and stuff like that. It's kind of overdone at this point with the whole different lanterns and stuff like that. But back then, man, it was something special. And I was obsessed with that book. When I did my overall Green Lantern readathon, I read every single tie-in to Blackest Night. I read the Green Lantern core book, the main Green Lantern book, the Blackest Night series. And you know what? A lot of it was good to great.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's something where when somebody tells me, hey, I really want to read Jeff Johns' Green Lantern run, I tell them, well, you better sit down, because you're going to be prepping yourself for a huge investment that pays off if you really dive into the tie-ins as well. Yeah.
I'm surprised at this question from Lars, because don't you ever get tired of superhero comics? Here's a zombie comic. Here's a ghost comic. Here's a haunted apartment building comic. Here's The Goon, which has nothing to do with superheroes. And then I also showed Sheets, a small independent book that has nothing to do with superheroes. So, yeah, we do get tired of superheroes. That's why we did tonight's show on zombies and ghosts.
I think I do and I don't. And I don't really, because a lot of people will actually comment on being like, oh man, I'm so burnt out on the big two or on superhero books, or even on the converse, being like, I'm so burnt out on reading manga right now. And I don't ever notice it, like when it happens to me, until I say something. And like recently, I went about a month and I read a ton of manga. And then one day I was trying to read the next series in my stack and I just didn't. And instead I started reading, I think Jess was around the time that I started trying to catch up on my Swamp Thing stuff again.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And then I read a ton of superhero stuff and a ton of Western books. And I read Swamp Thing and I read the Big Trouble in Little China that I was talking about. And I started reading a bunch of different Godzilla comics. And I just, I don't even notice when I get tired of this stuff, because I just naturally migrate to doing something different to keep myself entertained because I've always got books to read, and I've always got different types of books to read. So if I get tired of one thing, I don't have to worry about it because I've got a stack of other things that are completely different that I can dive right into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my diet, if my diet was nothing but superheroes, I would get extremely tired of them very fast. I love them, but that's not my whole diet. And this is why it's a great time to be a comic book collector or reader, is because there's so much to choose from besides superheroes. If you want great superheroes, you can find them. But if you want great independent comics or Space Frontier comics or something, they're there too.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to get those comics in collected edition form, InStockTrades.com is the place to go. You get your comics in collected edition form up to 50% off. Loyalty discounts add 2% to that. There's going to be the return of the OmniBros discount code here soon sometime. Just like there was the return of the 50% off books, IST is kind enough to give us a $50 gift card at the end of every month to give away to some lucky viewer. Maybe you live in the United States and you order $50 or more worth of books. You get free shipping, fabulous customer service, fabulous packaging. That's InStockTrades.com.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Oh, here's a question for Ryley. He was just talking about Big Trouble in Little China. I think Ryley dug it.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a fun comic. If you like the movie, you'll find a lot to enjoy about it. It follows. It's meant to be an official like canon continuation of the story from the movie. So it does have stuff to enjoy. There's even I haven't read the last part that's come out, but I think it's 25 issues of Big Trouble in Little China, and then there's also a Big Trouble in Little China crossover with Escape from New York. So you get two Kurt Russell characters in the same book, and they play off of that because they look like each other in the book, and they're like they call one of them, they call one of them Snake when it's not Snake. Or he gets mistaken for Snake. And then I have not read it yet, but there's also an Old Man Jack series, which it seems like a play on the Old Man Logan type thing, but comes back. I think it's a 12-issue series where in the future where Jack is much older.
Cool. And that's just has that been released in collected form yet?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's
I better get it.
A few like complete collection paperbacks.
Oh.
From Boom, maybe it's Boom or IDW. I don't remember which publisher, but they're out there. You can find those. I don't think they're very expensive either.
Okay, cool. Anything else we want to talk about tonight?
I think
we covered it. Any questions from the audience that they're dying to ask us, since we're talking about zombies and the undead?
Does Cosmic Ghost Rider count?
I'm always up to hear about that. I haven't read that book. I can't wait for that to be collected in omnibus form. I want to read that.
No, we've got an hour and a half on Ghost and Zombies. So.
Okay, good. Well, Omnibus Collector, where can they find you?
Well, you can find me on my channel, The Omnibus Collector, on YouTube. And, of course, you can find us on our Facebook group, The Omnibus Collectors Comic Swap and Community, which this weekend is going to be celebrating our 5th anniversary since I created the group.
Wow.
So 5 long years of crazy deals and crazy people doing crazy things. Lou, where can they find you?
You can find me glued to my television set till probably
2.5 hours till 2.
It's going to be a long night. 2.5 hours till Last of Us 2. No, you could find me at Comics Guide 101 on Twitter and on Facebook. If you want to see my spoiler-free thoughts on Last of Us 2 as I go through the game, you can follow me on Twitter. Comics Guide 101 is the best way to see that. I'm going to be documenting basically through Twitter, spoiler-free. Hey, this is what I'm thinking so far as I go through it. So that should be interesting and fun.
Nice. And you can find me, Omnidog, on Omnidog's Vault on YouTube and Omnidog on Omnidogs_Vault on Instagram. And Paul Baker, I've read Something is Killing the Children, and I thought it was excellent. I'm looking forward to the second volume. I don't know if anybody else has read it, but I thought it was great. It's really, really good. So there you go. And thank you to the chat. Chat was quite lively tonight. We appreciate it. We appreciate all our viewers. We certainly appreciate InStockTrades.com sticking with us through this unusual time in history. And I appreciate my co-hosts. Thank you for joining us here tonight to lead the talk of zombies and ghosts. And thanks to the viewers who are watching this. And peace and love. Peace and love.
Bye, everybody.